Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
If someone told me that a dating app would lead me to something this messed up, I would have laughed it off. But here I am, still processing the whole thing, because it's one of those situations you can't forget no matter how hard you try. It all started like any other dating app situation. I was swiping through profiles one bored Saturday afternoon when I came across Jenny's. Her profile was pretty standard, some cute pics, nothing over the top. She seemed normal, a little quirky, but nothing too out of the ordinary. Her bio caught my attention: coffee addict, dog lover. Let's skip the small talk and talk about the things that really matter. That line was a little different from the usual ones, so I decided to message her. We hit it off right away, talking about music, movies, our favorite places to eat. She seemed cool. Honestly, after a few days of texting, I felt like we had a pretty solid connection. Eventually, we decided to meet up. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, just a casual date. Grab a drink, get to know each other better. We went to this laid-back cafe in the city. She looked even cuter in person. We had a good time, chatting like we'd known each other forever. Nothing weird or off. At first, anyway. The first red flag showed up about a week later. Jenny invited me over to her place to hang out. We were watching a movie, and after a while, she got up to go to the bathroom. I didn't think much of it. She came back and didn't seem to act any different. But a few minutes later, I'd noticed this faint smell. It wasn't super strong, but it was there, and it was unpleasant. I didn't say anything, thinking maybe it was just a coincidence. She apologized, saying something about her dog making a mess in the kitchen, but that's when I started noticing little things here and there that made me question what I was dealing with. Like, why did she keep shifting in her seat so much? And why was she acting so nervous all of a sudden? It wasn't until the next time I stayed over that things took a turn for the worse. We'd been watching a movie in bed, just chilling, when I started feeling the same odd vibe. She got up to go to the bathroom again, but this time she took longer than usual. When she came back, she was red in the face, almost like she'd been crying. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was having a rough day. But as the night went on, I couldn't ignore the strong, sour smell that started to fill the room. At first, I was in total denial, like, no way. I didn't want to believe what was happening. I turned over and pretended I didn't smell anything, hoping the night would just end and everything would be fine. But then she started getting all weird and apologetic. She kept shifting in bed like she was uncomfortable. And that's when it happened. Let's just say she had an accident. And I mean accident in the worst way possible. She pooped in the bed. It was bad, really bad. I didn't even know what to do at first. I froze. It was like my brain just refused to process it. I didn't want to embarrass her, so I kept it together, didn't say anything right away. I just helped her clean up. Yeah, I cleaned up. It was awkward, to say the least, but I figured, hey, everyone has a bad moment, right? Maybe she was just having a rough night. So I helped her change the sheets, tossed the dirty ones in the laundry, and we just went to bed after that. But I won't lie, I was already starting to feel uneasy. The next few weeks felt like a strange blur. Things seemed normal between us, but I couldn't shake the weird vibe. Every time we hung out, she'd act a little off. She'd be extra quiet, and I'd catch her looking uncomfortable sometimes, like she was hiding something. I didn't want to be rude or intrusive, so I just pushed it to the back of my mind. Then one night, it happened again. This time, we were watching Netflix, and she got up to use the bathroom. But when she came back, she seemed really nervous, and I could tell something was wrong. She had this weird look in her eyes, almost like she was trying to figure out how to act normal, but it wasn't working. The smell was unmistakable this time. It wasn't just a little bad, it was horrible. I didn't even know what to say. I honestly didn't know what to do. She looked embarrassed, but I could tell she wasn't going to clean it up herself. So I did it again. I helped her clean up the mess, but this time I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started realizing that this wasn't just some one-off accident. It was a habit. A gross, bizarre habit. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself that it was okay, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't something I was comfortable with. The final straw came a week later. She invited me over again, and honestly, I was already thinking about pulling away. I didn't want to confront her directly because it felt like I'd be attacking her for something that was clearly beyond her control. But then she started acting strange from the moment I walked in. She was pacing around her living room looking jittery. I thought she was just anxious or stressed, but then it happened again. She got up and went to the bathroom. When she came back, she looked pale, almost sick. She sat on the couch next to me and started holding her stomach. I asked if she was okay, but she didn't answer right away. Then she got up and rushed back to the bathroom, and when she came back this time, I saw it. It wasn't just a small accident this time. She had full-blown diarrhea, and it was all over her clothes and the couch. I honestly felt like I was going to puke. This was beyond anything I could handle. I didn't say anything to her. I just stood up, grabbed my stuff, and left. That was the last time I spoke to her. I couldn't do it anymore. I felt bad for her, but that was just too much. I blocked her number and deleted the app. I don't know if she ever figured out why I stopped talking to her, but I couldn't keep putting myself in that situation. It was too weird, and honestly, I've never been the same since. Sometimes I still think about her, wondering what happened, but then I remind myself that I don't need to get involved in something so bizarre again. Some things you just don't come back from. I need to get this off my chest because it still messes with my head. It's honestly a bit of a nightmare. I can't believe it all happened because of a dumb dating app. You think you're just swiping through some profiles trying to meet someone new, but things can get way out of hand in ways you don't expect. I met Nick about 3 months ago on this app called Fresh Match. It's not like the usual ones, so I thought it might have better people. Anyway, I wasn't looking for anything serious, just someone to hang out with and get to know. I didn't expect much, but then Nick popped up. At first glance, he seemed pretty normal. Cute, kind of funny in his profile, not overly aggressive. His bio was simple, saying he loved hiking, good coffee, and lazy Sundays. He had some pretty decent photos too. Nothing cringeworthy or trying too hard. Just some regular shots of him with friends, hiking, and one with his dog, which, yeah, I'm a sucker for dog pics. What really caught my attention was his opening line. It wasn't the usual, hey, or what's up. He said, I've matched with you because you seem like someone who might not get many matches, and I wanted to make your day. Hope I'm right. I'll be honest. At first I was kind of thrown off. Like, who says that? It felt oddly like pity mixed with an attempt at being sweet, but I was curious, so I responded. It wasn't long before we were chatting about movies, hobbies, random stuff, and he seemed cool enough. I mean, maybe it was the low expectations that made me go along with it, but he wasn't terrible. After about a week of talking, he asked me out. We agreed to meet at this coffee shop near my place. Nothing fancy, just some casual meetup. I'd been out with guys before who were nice enough, but weren't really my type, and I wasn't expecting this date to be anything groundbreaking. But I don't know, something felt off about him even from the start. When we met, Nick seemed a bit different from the guy I'd been chatting with. He looked a little more nervous in person, almost too eager to please. He kept trying to make me laugh with jokes that weren't funny, and he'd repeat himself a lot, like he was trying too hard to seem relatable. He didn't look terrible, but something about his energy was off. Maybe it was the constant overenthusiasm or his inability to have a normal conversation. As the date went on, I started getting uncomfortable. At first, it was the usual small talk, but then he started asking questions that felt invasive. How many dates have you been on from this app? Do you get a lot of matches? You must get tons of guys chasing after you. I couldn't help but feel like he was trying to boost his own ego by putting me on the spot. I gave short answers, trying to steer the conversation to safer topics, but he just kept pressing. At one point, he even asked if I had any friends who were single, as if he was already planning on seeing if they'd be into him. By the end of the date, I was relieved it was over. There was nothing wrong with him, but there wasn't anything right either. He just didn't click. I made my excuses and politely ended the date, saying I had an early day ahead. He seemed disappointed but said, no problem, I'd get it. Maybe we can hang out again sometime. I wasn't interested, but I just smiled and told him I'd think about it. I was hoping that'd be the end of it. But that night, after I'd gotten home, something strange happened. He sent me a message saying how much fun he had, that he really thought we hit it off, and how much he'd like to see me again. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I kept it short, saying I didn't feel the spark. I told him I didn't think we were a good match. It felt harsh, but I didn't want to lead him on. I didn't expect him to take it that badly, but over the next few days, Nick kept texting me. It wasn't just once or twice. He would send message after message asking why I removed him. What did I do wrong? Was it something I said? He even went as far as asking if I met someone else. I wasn't replying, but the texts kept coming. After I ignored him for a couple of days, he started messaging me from different numbers. Hey, it's Nick. Please let me know what happened. I really thought we had something. Then another message. I can't stop thinking about our date. You're a really great person. Don't you think we should try again? I honestly felt overwhelmed. It wasn't like I could just block him right away because he seemed too persistent, like he'd keep coming back. At one point, I had just turned my phone off and take a break from everything. Then it got creepier. One afternoon, I was sitting at home watching TV when I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I don't know what made me feel so uneasy. But I knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. It was Nick. I had no idea how he found my address, but there he was, standing on the other side of the door, holding a bouquet of flowers and looking lost. I didn't open the door, but I could hear him on the other side. Hey, it's me, Nick. Please talk to me. I just want to understand. Why did you cut me off? He stood there for a few minutes, waiting, and then left. The next few days were just more of the same. He kept showing up in places I frequented, like the coffee shop where we met with a grocery store near my apartment. He didn't approach me, but I could see him watching me from a distance, like he was waiting for me to come around. It got so bad that I had to change my routine, going to different places, taking different routes. Eventually, I had to get a new phone number and block every account of his. I felt like I couldn't even trust my own space anymore. It's been a few weeks since then, and things have calmed down, but I still get nervous every time I see someone unfamiliar walking too close to my apartment. I don't know what Nick's deal was, but it wasn't something I ever want to go through again. It's crazy how someone can go from seeming like a nice guy to being a total creep in such a short time. And it still makes me wonder, how many other girls did he do this to? How many times has this happened to people who didn't get the chance to get away? I just wish I'd never swiped right. I've got a story for you that I'm still trying to process. It's been a while, but every time I think about it, I get a bit freaked out all over again. I met Polly on a dating app called Circle, which was supposed to be for people looking for genuine connections. And at first, it seemed like one of those real connections. She was super cute, blonde hair, hazel eyes, into the same books and movies as me. We hit it off pretty fast, texting all day, sending memes, and making plans to meet up in real life. At first, it was normal. We'd go for walks, grab coffee, and just talk. The kind of casual dating you expect when you meet someone online. But there was something about Polly that started feeling off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but it slowly became clearer as time went on. After about a month of hanging out, I began noticing how everywhere I went, she would pop up. If I went to a cafe with a friend, Polly would show up, sitting at a nearby table or casually walking past. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. You know, the world's a small place, right? But the more it happened, the weirder it felt. Then came the business trip. I had to go abroad for work, just a quick 3-day conference in London. I wasn't looking forward to it, but it was part of the job. I didn't think for a second that Polly would get involved in this one, but she did. On the night before my flight, I was at home packing my suitcase. I had most of my stuff in already, clothes, laptop, toiletries, and some paperwork for the conference. That's when she texted me. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, trying to zip up a jacket when my phone buzzed. Polly. The message was simple. Good luck with the conference. I hope you have a great time. Text me when you land. It was sweet, but it was a little too enthusiastic. Like, why was she being so over the top? We hadn't really talked about the trip much. And here she was, sending me that message out of nowhere. But I brushed it off. I packed the rest of my things, double-checked everything, and was about to zip up my suitcase when I heard a noise. I froze. It came from my closet. My heart skipped a beat, and I stood there for a moment just listening. At first, I thought it was a wind, but then I heard it again, a soft rustling sound like someone shifting around. I slowly walked over to the closet, my heart thumping in my chest. I opened the door, and there she was. Polly, she was crouching down in the back of my closet, her eyes wide and terrified like a deer caught in headlights. For a second, I couldn't even move. I just stood there, my mind racing. What the hell was she doing there? She looked up at me, and before I could even say anything, she rushed out of the closet, looking embarrassed but also sort of desperate. I, I didn't want to let you go alone, she said, almost whispering. I wanted to be with you. I thought maybe you'd want some company. I was completely frozen, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. I wasn't sure if I should be mad or scared or just confused. What are you talking about? I managed to say. Her face reddened, and she seemed to get flustered. I tried to sneak into your suitcase. I thought if I hid in there, I could go with you. You wouldn't even know I was there. It was stupid, I know. I'm sorry. It took me a minute to even get my thoughts together. I mean, what was I supposed to say? I wasn't even mad at that point. I was just genuinely freaked out. She had literally tried to hide in my suitcase so she could follow me to London without me knowing. That wasn't normal. That wasn't even close to normal. I told her to leave. I couldn't have her in my life after that. There was something off about her, and this just confirmed it. But as much as I wanted to just get rid of her, she didn't make it easy. She left the apartment, but she still sent me texts all night, apologizing over and over, saying how embarrassed she was and how she didn't mean to freak me out. But that didn't make me feel any better. I was stuck in the idea that someone would think it was okay to do something like that. Like, what had she been thinking? I couldn't even imagine how she'd thought it would play out. I flew out the next day, and the whole time, I kept checking my suitcase, double-checking that she wasn't hiding somewhere in there. I don't know if I was being paranoid, but the idea of her following me anywhere gave me the creeps. When I got to London, I couldn't focus on anything. I was checking my phone constantly, just waiting for her next message. And sure enough, it came. How's London? I miss you. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to be rude. I texted her back, keeping it short, telling her that I was at the conference and didn't have much time to talk. But even though I was trying to keep my distance, she kept texting me. I was at a pub with some colleagues that evening when I saw it. A new message from Polly. I've opened it, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. There, attached to the message, was a photo of my hotel, the one I was staying in London. The caption, I hope you're enjoying the view from your room. I felt my stomach drop. How the hell did she know where I was? I hadn't told her any details about the trip, and I certainly hadn't mentioned which hotel I was staying at. Panic said, was she here in London, watching me? I didn't reply to her messages after that. The thought of her somehow being in the same city, following me around, had me paranoid. I stayed in my room the next day, only going out for the conference. I didn't want to run into her, didn't want to see her anywhere near me. The next few days were a blur of trying to avoid her. I ended up blocking her number, but the messages still kept coming. New numbers, new accounts. She was relentless. When I got back home, I thought it would be over, but Polly kept finding ways to show up in my life. If I went to the grocery store, I'd see her standing in the aisle. If I went to a bar with friends, she'd be there too. It was like she was always lurking in the background. Eventually, I had to change my number, move to a new place, and block her out of every social media account. It was a nightmare. Looking back, I still don't understand how things got so out of hand. I don't know if Polly was always like that or if she just snapped. But whatever happened, I know one thing for sure, some people can't take a hint. And they'll follow you, literally, until you make them stop. So here's a story that still messes with me, and it's been a while. I met Denzel on a dating app called Vibe, which is supposed to be all about finding meaningful connections. That's what they sell you anyway. We were both in our mid-20s, and he seemed like a normal guy, at least at first. Tall, dark hair, and he was into all the same things I was. Hiking, indie music, and taking weekend trips to the beach. His profile picture even had him standing on a cliffside, looking out over the ocean like some kind of free-spirited adventurer. I was sold. He had a nice warm energy to him, and we hit it off quickly. We started talking every day, then met a few days later for a casual dinner. The vibe was good. Really good, actually. He was charming, thoughtful, and seemed so down to earth. The conversation flowed easily and honestly. I thought I was meeting someone I could actually be with. It was after our third or fourth date when things started getting weird. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but the more I saw him, the more I felt like there were little things about him that didn't quite add up. At first, it was small stuff. He was a bit obsessive about his phone. Not in the checking it every few minutes kind of way, but more like he would always look at it with this strange intensity, like he was waiting for a message that never came. He tried to act casual about it when I noticed, but there was something off about it. Then came the night I met his sister. We'd been talking for a while, and he invited me over to his place for dinner. It wasn't anything fancy, just some pasta and a movie, something low-key. I was excited to see where things would go. I didn't expect to meet anyone else, but when I got to his apartment, there she was. His half-sister, Mia. She was about my age, early 20s, with blonde hair and a bit of a quirky look to her. She was sitting on the couch, wearing pajamas, and they both looked like they'd just come from some kind of shared activity. It didn't take long for her to get up and introduce herself. She was friendly enough, but there was something, I don't know, odd in the way she looked at me. I could tell she wasn't thrilled to see me, but whatever. It's not like I was expecting a red carpet welcome. The weird part came when Mia left the room. Denzel started talking about her in a way that made me uncomfortable. He was super protective of her, saying that they'd always been close because they grew up together, and he made it sound like they were inseparable. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just a sibling thing, right? But as the night went on, I started to notice how his attention would always drift back to her. Every time she walked into the room, he turned to look at her. It wasn't in a brotherly way, more like in an intense, almost possessive way. And the way he talked about her? Like she was the most important person in his life, and nothing else really mattered. After dinner, we were chilling in the living room when Mia went to her room. Denzel looked at me and said, "She usually goes to bed early, but I thought we could hang out for a bit." I agreed, but by now I was feeling a little uneasy. He kept talking about Mia, about how she had a hard time socializing with people outside their family. The whole time I was trying to figure out if this guy was just overly attached to his sister, or if there was something else going on. It wasn't until later that night when I realized just how messed up things really were. I stayed over, not thinking anything of it. We had a few drinks, so I ended up crashing in his room. At some point, I woke up in the middle of the night. I was kind of in a daze, but I heard a noise coming from the bathroom. The door was cracked, and I could see light spilling out. I got up to use the bathroom, but as I walked by, it froze. Through the crack in the door, I saw something that made my heart stop. Denzel and Mia, both of them, were in the bathtub, sitting side by side. The lights were dim, but I could see enough to know what was happening. They were laughing, and it looked like they were just chilling with the way they were sitting together. Too close, too comfortable. It was not the kind of thing I'd expect to see between siblings. I stood there for a second, trying to process what I was seeing. I don't know what was more disturbing, the fact that they were so casual about it, or that I had just walked in on something I couldn't unsee. I quickly backed away and went back to bed, my mind racing. The next morning, I pretended like nothing had happened. I didn't want to accuse him of anything without knowing for sure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off. And Denzel, he acted like everything was fine. We had breakfast together like nothing weird had happened. I tried to act normal, but the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I felt. Was I being paranoid? Or was there something genuinely messed up about the way he and Mia interacted? I decided to confront him later that week. I asked him if there was something going on between him and his sister. At first, he laughed it off like I was being ridiculous. But then when I pushed him, he stopped smiling. His eyes got serious, and he told me they'd always been close. Too close, I thought. He told me that when they were younger, they'd often bathe together, sleep in the same bed, and do everything together because their parents were always busy. It sounded so off, like a red flag the size of a billboard. I felt sick. I couldn't stay with him after that. I told him I was leaving, and he didn't argue. He didn't beg me to stay. And I don't know if that made it worse or better. But when I left that day, I knew I'd never see him again. It's been a few months, and I still think about what happened. I still wonder if I misinterpreted the whole thing, but deep down I know I didn't. There was something wrong with the way he and Mia were. I don't care how much they try to justify it. It wasn't normal. It wasn't healthy. I still can't forget the image of them sitting together in that bathtub. To this day, I wonder how many other people have walked into that same situation and just didn't realize the red flags until it was too late. It's the kind of thing you never expect to happen when you meet someone on a dating app. But sometimes things are not what they seem. I'd never thought I'd end up writing something like this. I always thought the worst thing that could happen from using a dating app was getting ghosted, maybe a bad date here and there. But I was wrong. I met Ola on this lesser-known app called Cleek, which was supposed to be for people who like to keep things low-key, no pressure, just casual meetups and chats. I didn't think it'd be any different from the others, but I was bored and figured why not. She was cute, tall, blonde, with a smile that seemed genuine. Her bio was simple, nothing over the top, just something about loving late-night walks and binging true crime docs. I liked that. We started talking, and it was easy. She wasn't the type to throw out a bunch of cheesy pickup lines. It was comfortable, you know. We started texting a lot. Every day, actually. And after about 2 weeks, we decided to meet up. We went to a little dive bar downtown, nothing fancy. Honestly, it wasn't even a date in my mind. We were just hanging out, seeing if the vibe was right. She was exactly as she seemed online, chill and down to earth. We drank, talked, and laughed about the dumbest stuff. There was this instant connection, like we just clicked. The kind of chemistry that feels effortless. We hung out a couple more times after that. The usual stuff. Dinner, drinks, Netflix, whatever. I liked her. She was fun to be around, and she had this weird charm to her. But after a few weeks, I started noticing small things that didn't quite add up. She was a little too secretive when it came to her phone. Not that I'm the kind of guy who checks out someone's phone, but it was weird. Like she'd leave it face down all the time when we were hanging out, and when I'd ask about it, she'd just shrug it off with a smile. Just work stuff, she'd say. I didn't think much of it at first. Some people are just protective of their privacy, right? Then came the night everything changed. We were at her apartment, and we'd just finished dinner. I was getting ready to head out since it was getting late, but she asked me to stay. Nothing crazy, just to watch a movie, hang out. So I stayed. We sat on the couch, got comfortable. At some point, things got a little more intimate. I won't get into the details, but I'll just say we ended up getting a lot closer. Afterward, we were both laying on the couch, a little tired, a little tipsy. She was scrolling through her phone, her face lit up by the screen. I don't know what made me look over, but something in me just felt off. I glanced at her phone, and there it was. A notification for a new post on her OV account. I didn't say anything right away. It wasn't like I was trying to snoop, but my brain was suddenly racing. I didn't know why, but the whole situation just felt strange. I figured I'd let it slide, but I couldn't. I waited a few minutes, then casually asked her about it. She quickly put her phone down and gave me this little nervous laugh. "Oh, it's just something I do on the side," she said. "You know, a way to make some extra cash." I didn't know what to think. At that moment, I was caught between being confused and kind of uncomfortable. She hadn't really mentioned anything about that before. But then again, who was I to judge? Everyone has their hustle, right? But still, something about it felt off, especially after we had just been so close. The next couple of days, I couldn't get it out of my head. I kept replaying the way she'd acted, how quick she was to brush it off. And the more I thought about it, the more questions I had. So I decided to check out her profile just to see what she had going on. I wish I hadn't. It was right there, a post with a picture of me. Not just any picture. It was taken from the night we were on the couch after everything. I was in the background, but it was clear that it was from the same night. I wasn't sure how she had managed to snap it without me noticing. But the worst part wasn't the picture itself. It was a caption. Something about exclusive content for my supporters. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I had this sinking feeling in my stomach as I went through her posts. There were more, plenty more. Some were way more personal, showing way more than I ever thought she would share. It was also public, and I was in some of them. I wasn't in every post, but there were enough to make it clear what was going on. She had been recording our moments, turning them into content for her OV account without ever telling me. I felt betrayed. Used. I wasn't some random guy she was trying to make money off of. We'd had real moments together, or at least that's what I thought. I never once agreed to be part of anything like that. I couldn't stay calm. My mind was racing. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to cause a scene, but I couldn't just ignore this. It wasn't about the money, it wasn't even about the fact that she had an OV account. It was the fact that she had taken something personal and shared it with strangers without my consent. I felt so dumb for not seeing it earlier. I decided to text her. I wasn't expecting a perfect answer, but I had to hear what she had to say. Her response was quick, almost too quick. She apologized immediately, said she didn't mean to make me feel uncomfortable, but that this was how she made money and that it was just her thing. She said she hadn't meant to exploit me. But at that point, I couldn't get past the fact that she never even mentioned it until I found out for myself. She told me she'd take the post down, but it was already too late. I told her I couldn't continue seeing her. I blocked her on everything: social media, messaging, the app we met on. I wanted nothing to do with her. Looking back, I feel embarrassed. I feel stupid. I should have trusted my gut sooner. But I guess sometimes it's easy to get caught up in something, and you don't realize until it's too late that it's not what you thought it was. I learned the hard way to always ask the right questions, no matter how awkward it might seem. And yeah, I still think about Ola sometimes. But mostly, I think about how messed up it is that someone would take advantage of a moment like that without any regard for the other person involved. That's the part that gets me. But looking back now, I can't help but feel like it all started when I swiped right on Dominic. I wasn't expecting anything serious, just someone to hang out with, maybe meet up for coffee or something casual. It was one of those let's see where it goes situations. And honestly, I didn't even think about it too much. It was one of those nights where you just scroll through an app out of boredom like we all do. His profile was nothing special. He looked like a decent guy, maybe a little too polished for my taste, but he seemed down to earth in his photos. No weird gym selfies, no cryptic quotes about living life to the fullest, just simple pics of him at his favorite bar, and one of him with a dog. Points for that. I like dogs. So I sent him a message, something casual like, "Hey, I see you have a dog. What's his name?" The conversation was super chill at first. We talked about random stuff, movies, music, travel, nothing heavy. He asked me out after about a week of texting, and honestly, I was kind of excited. It was nice to be talking to someone who wasn't constantly trying too hard to impress me. At least, that's what I thought at the time. We met at this local cafe, nothing fancy, but I liked it. He was easy to talk to, funny in that sarcastic, dry way. We had a good time, and I figured we'd hang out again. We did, and then again and again. It was fun at first, like you're getting to know someone and it's all fresh and new. But then things started to get weird. At first, I thought it was just me overthinking things. Dominic was the type of guy who would occasionally be a little distant. He'd cancel plans last minute or suddenly seem distracted when we were together. I brushed it off. Maybe he had a lot going on, or maybe he was just one of those guys who didn't always know how to open up. Whatever. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But then I started noticing patterns. It wasn't just that he was a little distracted. He was actively avoiding me. He made excuses to leave early when we went out, check his phone constantly, and sometimes even act like he was bored when we were hanging out. At first, I thought maybe I wasn't interesting enough. I'd never been in a relationship where I second-guessed myself like that, so I just assumed it was something I was doing wrong. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized that it wasn't me. It was him. One evening, we were supposed to meet up for drinks. I was already waiting at the bar when I got a text from him saying he'd be late, something about work. But his tone was off. I knew him well enough by now to recognize when something didn't add up. I sat there for about an hour, waiting. I checked my phone, and there it was, a notification. He posted a picture on his Instagram story of him at another bar, hanging out with some people I didn't know. No explanation, no warning. I was confused. Was he really just that clueless about how disrespectful that was? I couldn't let it slide, so I texted him, but he didn't reply. By the time I got home, I felt sick. Not just because he stood me up, but because I had this gut feeling that something else was going on. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a little voice in my head saying this isn't right. The next few days were no better. We barely talked, and when we did, it was forced. He'd avoid my questions and change the subject when I asked about his plans. I knew something was off, but I couldn't figure out what. It wasn't like he was straight up rude or anything, but I was starting to get this nagging feeling that he was hiding something. Then came the moment that cracked everything wide open. I was hanging out at my best friend Carla's place, just catching up like we usually do. She was telling me about some new guy she had met on Vive. Yeah, another dating app, but we both had a weird addiction to them. She was showing me his profile, and that's when I saw it. Dominic. At first, I thought it was some kind of sick joke. I mean, why would Carla be showing me his profile? She knew about Dominic and me. She'd even met him once when we all went out for drinks. But the more I looked at the profile, the more I realized it wasn't a joke. It was real. It was Dominic's profile, and it was active. and in his latest post, there he was, posing with Carla. I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. I stared at the screen, blinking, trying to process what I was seeing. They were too close in the picture. Like, not just friends. More like a couple. And that's when it hit me I wasn't crazy. I hadn't been overthinking things. Dominic was cheating on me with my best friend. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know what to do or say. I felt betrayed in a way I'd never experienced. I looked at Carla, who was sitting right next to me, laughing about some dumb thing she had seen on her phone. She had no idea I knew. I don't even remember how long I sat there before I said something. It was like I was in shock. I didn't confront her right away. I had to process everything first. I knew I couldn't just pretend I hadn't seen it. The thing is, I didn't even feel angry at first. I just felt empty. How had I not seen the signs? How had I been so blind? I trusted them both, and now it felt like my entire world was falling apart. The worst part, neither of them ever came clean. Dominic never apologized. Carla never said a word about the picture or how they'd been seeing each other behind my back. It was like they'd both thought I wouldn't find out. I ended things with Dominic soon after. I blocked him on everything. And as for Carla, well, I don't really talk to her anymore. It's hard to trust someone who could do that to you. But I guess that's how life goes. You learn the hard way. I still don't understand how I didn't see it sooner, but one thing's for sure. I'll never swipe right on anyone without looking a little deeper next time. I've never been the type to jump into relationships fast. Honestly, I wasn't even looking for one when I met Shelley. I was just tired of the usual dating apps and thought, why not try something different? That's how I ended up on Vibe, this app that felt like a mix between Instagram and Tinder, but with way less pressure. It was casual, fun, and not as intense as the other apps. I posted a few decent photos, wrote something about enjoying good music, gaming, and random adventures, and that was it. I didn't expect anything serious. Then came Shelley. She stood out immediately. Her profile was simple, but she had this vibe. She looked like she was into the same quirky stuff I liked. Vintage clothes, old school horror films, and photography. She had this calm, almost mysterious vibe to her that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I figured, hey, why not? She seems cool, and sent her a message. The conversation was easy, like we'd known each other for years. We swapped memes, recommended each other music, and talked about the weirdest, most random things. Stuff that felt real, not just surface-level small talk. After a few days, we decided to meet up in person. I wasn't expecting fireworks or anything, just a chill hangout. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. She looked even better in person than she did in her photos. Shelley had this way of making everything around her feel a little more interesting. I won't lie, I was kind of drawn to her. The first couple of weeks were awesome. We'd hang out at her place, go for walks, watch weird documentaries, and just vibe. There was nothing weird about it at all. Well, nothing too weird. At least not at first. It started slow, little things that didn't really make sense. One night, I went over to her place after work. I noticed my brand new headphones, those super expensive noise-canceling ones I had been saving up for, weren't where I left them. I figured I was just being forgetful, but after searching the whole apartment, they were nowhere to be found. Shelley just shrugged it off, saying she hadn't seen them. I didn't think much of it. Maybe I lost them somewhere, right? Then it happened again. A week later, I noticed that my gaming console, another pricey one, was missing. I wasn't a huge gamer, but it was something I'd saved for months to buy. I asked Shelley if she had seen it, and she gave me this same nonchalant response. Maybe you left it at your place, she suggested. It wasn't adding up. I wasn't the type to misplace stuff like that. Slowly, I started to wonder if I was losing my mind, but I also started thinking maybe I had let my guard down too quickly. Maybe Shelley wasn't what she seemed. The missing stuff kept happening. My watch, a leather jacket, even a few expensive vinyl records I collected. Gone. Every time she acted surprised, like she had no idea where they were. I started keeping a mental list of things I'd noticed missing, and I realized it wasn't just random. I was losing some pretty valuable stuff, and it wasn't like I was careless enough to just forget about it. At this point, I knew something was off, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. It didn't help that Shelley was always so sweet and apologetic when I brought it up, brushing it off with jokes about me being a clumsy, forgetful guy. It made me feel crazy, like I was imagining things. But then came the tipping point. I was scrolling through Vibe one night, mindlessly flicking through profiles like I usually do. Out of nowhere, I saw Shelly's face. But it wasn't a new post. It was a listing on Vinted, the secondhand shopping app. She had posted one of my missing items, a pair of designer sneakers I'd just bought, that I was sure I hadn't worn in weeks. They were for sale on her account, priced lower than what they were worth, but still enough to make me pause. I clicked on her profile and started scrolling through. She had other items listed for sale. I recognized almost every single one. My watch, my jacket, a few old band tees I'd never worn but had kept in my closet. Everything was there, all listed as pre-loved with a price tag that was way too low for what they were worth. I felt a pit in my stomach. I was staring at my own stuff being sold by her without my permission. It hit me all at once. The missing items, the nonchalant excuses, the weird way she always seemed a little too interested in my things. She wasn't just casually borrowing them. She was taking them. Selling them. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to confront her, not yet. I needed to know more, so I started tracking her listings. Every time something of mine popped up, I'd check it against my stuff. It wasn't even subtle. Shelley was turning my personal belongings into cash, one item at a time. I'm not going to lie, I started getting a little paranoid. I checked my apartment more often, making sure everything was still there. I even took pictures of some of my things, just to have proof. But I knew the moment I confronted her, it would be over. If I was wrong, I looked like a fool. If I was right, well, what could I do? It wasn't I could just call the cops over a few missing items. But the thing was, I didn't need to confront her. She made the move for me. One night, Shelley invited me over for a surprise. When I showed up, she was acting oddly quiet, almost nervous. I didn't think much of it at first. But then, while we were sitting on the couch, she pulled out my gaming console. The one I had been looking for, the one I knew she'd sold. She handed it to me, along with a fake smile. "Found this at my friend's place," she said, her voice not quite meeting my eyes. "You must have left it there." That's when it clicked. Everything. She didn't even try to hide it anymore. The guilt was written all over her face. I didn't say anything. I just stood up, grabbed my things, and walked out. The next day, I unfollowed her on all social media. I blocked her on Vibe, Vinted everywhere. I didn't want to deal with it. And honestly, I couldn't believe I had let myself be so stupid. But the worst part, I wasn't even angry. I was just embarrassed. I let a total stranger into my life, and she'd taken me for a fool. That's how I learned to never trust anyone too quickly, especially not someone who seems a little too perfect. I'd never heard from Shelley again, and I don't think I ever will. But every time I see one of my old items pop up on secondhand apps, I've wondered if she's still out there taking what isn't hers. I met Terry through one of those apps where everyone's just looking for something casual. At first, I thought he was pretty chill, normal, funny, and easy to talk to. He wasn't one of those guys who bombarded me with cheesy pickup lines. We hit it off, started texting all the time, and after a few days of chatting, we decided to meet up. The date went great, or at least I thought it did. We went to a bar, grabbed drinks, and just talked for hours. He was super easy to talk to, a little quirky, but I liked it. By the end of the night, we were already making plans for a second date. It felt like the beginning of something nice. But things took a weird turn after that. I started noticing small things that didn't sit right with me. Terry was always super active on dating apps. I mean, I get it. People use these apps all the time, even when they're talking to someone. But Terry, he was on them all the time. We'd be texting, and then suddenly, he'd go silent for like 20 minutes. When he'd come back, it was always with some random excuse like, "Oh, I was just scrolling through the app." He was the kind of guy who never seemed to get off his phone, and it started bugging me. It wasn't like he was playing a game or doing something productive. He just swiped through people like it was a habit he couldn't break. At first, I let it slide. Maybe he was just checking things out, whatever. But then one day, I got a notification from the app. It wasn't anything crazy, just the usual, "Hey, someone liked you," kind of thing. But when I looked at the profile of the person who liked me, I almost lost it. It was Terry. He had swiped on me again, just like anyone else would. I had to double check that I wasn't just being paranoid. But no, it was him. Same pictures, same bio. It wasn't a mistake. He literally swiped right on me while we were already talking. I didn't bring it up right away because I honestly didn't know how to. Was this normal? Was it just something people did? I had no idea. But it got worse, way worse after that. A few days later, I went to a coffee shop with my best friend, Rachel. We were talking about guys, life, typical girl talk. And as we were sitting there, I happened to glance at her phone. It was the dating app notification thing. And guess who she had matched with? Terry. Same pictures, same everything. I wasn't sure if I was imagining things, so I had to ask her. She confirmed it. She had matched with Terry on the same app, the one we had both been using. At this point, I was starting to get a bad feeling. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just a coincidence, right? Maybe he just liked me and you people. So I brushed it off, not really wanting to cause any drama over something that seemed minor. But then it started happening more and more. One by one, I noticed that Terry kept showing up on everyone's apps. It was like he was everywhere. Rachel wasn't the only one. My cousin Emma. Yep, she matched with him too. Then my friend Julia, who lived across the country, messaged me saying she'd seen Terry on her app. I couldn't believe it. He had literally matched with everyone I knew. And he wasn't just swiping right. He was doing it to people I cared about. At that point, I started getting seriously uncomfortable. I decided to confront him about it. I was like, hey, I noticed you keep matching with all my friends and family on the app. What's up with that? He tried to play it off like it was no big deal. He laughed and said, oh, I'm just trying to see if anyone else is on there. Just browsing around. But it didn't make sense. We were dating, and he was still actively looking for other matches, swiping through my entire circle of people like it was a game. It felt like he was fishing, seeing how many people he could match with, even though he was already seeing me. I didn't like the idea of him just treating it like some kind of numbers game. But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that he was matching with people who meant something to me. My friends, my family, they were off limits in my opinion. He couldn't just go around hitting on everyone I knew. I started wondering if this was something that had been going on the whole time. Was I just another girl in his roster? Was he using me just to keep things casual, while he was out there collecting matches like they were trophies? At this point, I felt like I had to dig deeper. I went on the dating app again, pretending like I was just casually browsing, which, let's be real, was totally awkward. But I found something that sent a chill down my spine. There he was, again. Terry had swiped right on me, and not just once, but he'd been matching with me consistently for days. It was as if he was making sure I stayed interested, keeping me on the hook while he played around with everyone else. That was the final straw. I felt humiliated, honestly. Here I was thinking we were building something real, something serious, and he was out there treating me like an option. He wasn't even hiding it. I felt stupid for not noticing it sooner. I broke up with him that night. I didn't even drag it out. I just told him that I wasn't okay with the way he was behaving, that I couldn't be with someone who treated relationships like a game. He tried to make excuses, but I wasn't having it. I had seen enough. The thing is, even after I ended it, he kept popping up in my life. Not just on dating apps, but on social media too. He was still trying to insert himself into the lives of my friends and family. He was still making sure I knew he was around, like he couldn't let go of whatever weird control he thought he had over me. But I wasn't going to let it get to me. I blocked him everywhere and told my friends and family to watch out. Looking back, I still can't wrap my head around it. I thought we had something real, but he just treated me like another profile on a dating app. It felt like I was nothing more than a line on his to-do list, another person to swipe through, another number to add to his collection. It's honestly disturbing how easily some people can manipulate situations like that. I really don't know what his endgame was. All I know is I'm glad Guile and I did. I'm done with the weird online dating world for now, and I'm never trusting someone who matches with my whole family again. It was a lesson learned the hard way, but at least I learned it. When I first met Gabriella, I thought she was perfect. I mean, she was funny, smart, and she had that vibe where you just clicked with someone. We met on a dating app, of course, and after a few weeks of texting and talking, we decided to meet up in person. Our first date was at this taco place downtown, nothing fancy, but it felt like the kind of casual spot where you could really talk and get to know someone. I didn't expect much, but we ended up talking for hours. It was one of those dates where time flies, and before you know it, the restaurant is closing and you're still sitting there, talking about everything and nothing all at once. Gabriella was great. We kept in touch after that, texting all the time, and before I knew it, we were hanging out regularly. At first, everything felt amazing. She was easy to be around. We did the usual dinner dates, went to a few movies, and just spent a lot of time together. Honestly, I was falling for her, and it seemed like things were going great. But then, well, things started to get weird. It all started with the leftovers. I didn't think much of it at first. Everyone has their quirks, right? But after a couple of weeks, I started to notice a pattern. Gabriella would always finish what was left on my plate. It wasn't even like I offered it to her. I have leftovers from lunch or dinner, set them in the fridge to eat later, and then the next time I go to grab them, they were gone. At first, I just shrugged it off. Maybe she was hungry and didn't want to cook, but it kept happening. One night, I came home after a long day at work, excited to finally dig into the pizza I'd saved from the night before. I put my bag down and went straight to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and nothing. The pizza was gone. Just like that. My stomach dropped. Gabriella had been at my place the day before, and sure enough, when I texted her about it, she casually mentioned that she had eaten the leftovers. At that point, I thought maybe she just didn't realize I was saving them, or maybe she was just being nice, helping herself out of habit. I didn't make a big deal out of it, but it happened again. The next time, it was some Chinese food I had ordered. I'd just come back from a grueling workout, and I was starving. I was already looking forward to it, my favorite kind of dumplings and fried rice. But when I opened the fridge, there was nothing. I knew for sure I hadn't eaten it. I checked my phone to see if maybe I had ordered something else, but nope. It was the last meal from the night before. So I asked Gabriella. Again, she casually admitted that she'd eaten it. She said she didn't realize I was saving it for later and that she was hungry. The way she said it made me feel like I was being silly for even caring. I let it go again, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But that wasn't the end of it. It didn't take long for her to start finishing my food while we were out. We'd go to a restaurant, and I'd order something I was really craving. Maybe a burger or a salad, whatever I was in the mood for. I'd take a few bites, maybe even half the plate, and then she'd start eating from my plate. She'd grab a fry here, a bite of my sandwich there without even asking. It was always casual, like it was no big deal. But for me, it felt like a big deal. I didn't mind sharing food with people I cared about, but this was different. She wasn't asking, she wasn't offering to split the meal. She was just taking. The thing is, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be controlling or make a big deal out of something that felt small. But after a while, it started eating at me. I mean, when does it stop? First, it's the pizza. Then it's the Chinese food. Then it's every single time we go out, I end up with half of what I ordered or none at all. I didn't know if she thought I was being cheap or if she genuinely just didn't care, but it was starting to bug me. I started keeping track of the times I'd come home to missing food, and it was happening way more often than I'd like to admit. One night, I had enough. I'd just gotten back from a work trip, and I was exhausted. I'd been on the road for 3 days, and all I wanted was some comfort food. I grabbed a takeout order I'd been craving, and as soon as I walked through the door, I went straight to the kitchen. But there it was again. My food was gone. I texted Gabriella to ask her if she ate it, and she confirmed that she had. No big deal, just a casual mention, like it was completely normal. But for me, it felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't want to be a doormat. I didn't want to let this slide anymore. So I confronted her about it. I told her how it was making me feel. I told her that it wasn't just about the food. It was about respect, about her not taking what was mine without asking. I thought she'd understand. I thought she'd apologize or at least try to explain. But instead, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny, like I was being ridiculous. She said I needed to lighten up, that it was just food, that I was overreacting. It hit me hard. How could she not see it? How could she not understand that it wasn't just about the food? It was about boundaries, about respect. But she didn't care. She brushed it off like it was no big deal. And that made me realize something. I wasn't happy. This small thing, was turning into a huge problem for me, and it wasn't just about the food. It was about her disregard for my feelings, for my space, for what I needed. After that conversation, I couldn't look at her the same way. I started seeing things I hadn't noticed before. The way she took my things without asking, the way she assumed she had the right to help herself to whatever she wanted. It was a small thing, but it had a big impact on me. A few days later, I ended it. I broke up with Gabriella. I couldn't keep pretending that it was okay, that her lack of boundaries and respect didn't bother me. It wasn't about the leftovers. It was about how she treated me, like I didn't matter, like my feelings didn't matter. I didn't need someone who thought they could just take from me, literally and figuratively, and expect me to be fine with it. The whole situation felt so weird. It wasn't some big dramatic breakup. It wasn't because of a huge fight or some other deal breaker. It was just this one thing that kept happening, this small, annoying thing that eventually pushed me over the edge. And honestly, I think I'm better off without her. I met Austin on a dating app. We didn't exactly hit it off right away, but there was something about him that caught my attention. Maybe it was his sense of humor or the fact that he didn't try to impress me with cheesy lines or over-the-top compliments. He just seemed normal. And after a string of weird and awkward conversations with other guys on the app, normal sounded pretty great. We started texting, then moved to phone calls, and before I knew it, we were meeting up in person. Our first date was at a small cafe near where I lived. It wasn't anything fancy, but it felt comfortable. Austin was tall, with dark hair and a laid-back vibe. He wasn't trying too hard, but he had this quiet confidence about him that I found appealing. We talked for hours that day about everything, life, our pasts, what we wanted out of the future. It felt like we clicked, like this could be something real. Things moved quickly after that. We went on more dates, spent a lot of time together, and I found myself really liking him. There was this easy connection that I hadn't felt with anyone else in a long time. I started thinking that maybe this could be the start of something serious. I hadn't been in a relationship for a while, but Austin made me feel like I could be myself, and that was something I hadn't felt in a long time. Then, about 2 months into dating, everything changed. It started with him not feeling well. He would mention it here and there that he felt a little off or had been tired more than usual, but I didn't think much of it. I just figured it was nothing. Everyone has those days, right? But then one evening, he called me to tell me that he had gone to the doctor. I could hear the worry in his voice when he said they were running some tests, trying to figure out what was going on. He didn't say much more, but I could tell this wasn't just a simple cold. The next couple of weeks were a blur. He kept going to doctors, and every time he'd update me, it seemed like it was something more serious. Eventually, he told me it was cancer. I don't think I processed it the way I should have at first. It felt like a punch to the gut. I kept telling myself it was going to be okay. They caught it early, he said. He was going to fight it, and everything would be fine. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. All I could think about was that I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to help him get through this. So I stayed. I stayed with him through the hospital visits, the treatments, the sleepless nights. I watched him go from being this vibrant, energetic guy to someone who could barely keep his eyes open. I stayed when he had to shave his head because his hair started falling out. I stayed when he didn't want to talk about it, when he just wanted to be alone. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. There were moments when I felt like I was losing myself, like I didn't know who I was anymore. All my time and energy went into making sure Austin was okay, and while I wanted to help him, I started to feel like I was losing myself in the process. It was hard, but I loved him, and I wasn't going to leave him when he needed someone the most. Months passed, and his treatment started working. Slowly, he began to regain his strength. He started smiling again, cracking jokes like he used to, and eventually his doctors told him the cancer was in remission. I remember the day he told me that. I was so relieved. It felt like I could breathe again. But after the relief came something else, something I wasn't prepared for. Once Austin was back to his old self, I started noticing a change in him. He wasn't as attentive as he used to be. He'd get distracted when we hung out, texting or checking his phone every few minutes. He would make plans and then cancel last minute or show up late without any real explanation. At first, I chalked it up to him adjusting to life after treatment. Maybe he was still processing everything, trying to figure out what came next. But then it happened. One night after we had dinner, he told me that he wanted to talk. I could feel the weight of his words before he even said anything. We sat down on the couch, and he told me that he didn't think we were right for each other anymore. I was shocked, but I didn't want to react right away. Maybe he was just confused. Maybe he just needed time to figure things out. But when he looked at me the way he said it, the coldness in his eyes, it wasn't just uncertainty, it was final. He told me that now that he was healthy again, he realized he could do better. He wanted to see what else was out there. He said I was great, but he wasn't feeling the connection anymore. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I had been slapped in the face. I stayed by his side through everything, through the sickness, the pain, the uncertainty, and now, just like that, it was over. He didn't even try to make it work. He didn't even give us a chance to figure out what was going on. It felt so unfair, like everything I had done for him, everything I had given, didn't matter at all. I tried to hold it together, but I couldn't. I felt like I had been used. All that time, all that energy I put into helping him through his illness, and now he was just walking away because he thought he deserved someone better. I don't know why it hit me so hard. Maybe it was because I believed in him. I believed in us. But when someone tells you they don't want you anymore, especially after all you've been through together, it makes you question everything. I left that night, took my things, and went back to my apartment. I sat in my room staring at the walls, not knowing what to feel. Part of me wanted to be angry, but another part of me just felt empty. I couldn't believe someone could be so cold after everything. Austin moved on quickly. A few weeks later, I saw on social media that he was dating someone else. It didn't surprise me, but it hurt. The person he could do better with was already there, waiting for him once he was healthy again. I guess I never really understood why he did. I was there for him when he needed someone, and when he got what he wanted, he just left me behind. It felt like I was nothing more than a placeholder, someone to fill the space until he was ready for something better. The whole situation left me confused, hurt, and questioning everything I thought I knew about relationships. Austin was someone I had really cared about, but in the end, he didn't care about me the same way. And that, I guess, is the hardest pill to swallow. I'll never forget the first time I saw Debbie's profile on the dating app. It was one of those apps where you swipe right if you're interested and left if you're not. Simple enough, right? I wasn't looking for anything serious, just some casual chatting and maybe meeting someone new. But Debbie's profile caught my attention right away. She had this cute smile, and her bio was down to earth, talking about her love for books, hiking, and coffee. It felt real, and that's rare. We started chatting, and everything felt super normal at first. We clicked over similar interests: books, music, places we both wanted to visit. Her messages weren't rushed, but they were thoughtful. She wasn't just sending emojis or one-word answers. We were actually talking. We texted back and forth for a few days, and it seemed like this could actually be something. It felt like the kind of thing you don't expect on a dating app, which at least in my experience was pretty rare. I finally asked her out for coffee, and we met at this cute little cafe downtown. When I saw her in person, she was even better looking than her pictures, which honestly is a big deal when it comes to online dating. We talked for hours, and the conversation just flowed. It was one of those dates where you don't even realize how much time has passed until the cafe starts closing up. After that, we started seeing each other more often. It was a lot of fun. We'd go on hikes, grab lunch, and just hang out. I was starting to really like her, but after a while, something weird started happening. I wasn't sure what to make of it at first, but it quickly became hard to ignore. Debbie had a twin sister. I didn't know about her at first. Debbie mentioned her a couple of times during our conversations, but it wasn't something she talked about too much. To be honest, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just one of those family things. People have siblings. It wasn't a big deal. But then I met her. It was one of those weird situations where you're hanging out with your girlfriend, and then her sister just shows up. One afternoon, Debbie and I were hanging out at the park, just sitting on a bench, talking about random stuff. Out of nowhere, her twin Darlene came up behind us. I didn't even know who she was at first, but I saw the resemblance right away. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes. I could tell right off that they were identical. Darlene was friendly enough, or at least that's what I thought at first. She sat down next to us, and we all talked for a while. But the more I listened, the more I started feeling like there was something off. Darlene was a little too interested in me. She kept making these little comments that at first I thought were just jokes. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized they weren't really jokes at all. It was the way she looked at me. There was this intensity in her eyes that I couldn't quite shake off. Every time I laughed or looked away, she would keep staring. It felt like she was trying to get my attention, like she wanted me to focus on her instead of Debbie. I didn't say anything about it, though. I didn't want anything awkward. Maybe I was overthinking it. The weirdness didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, Darlene kept showing up whenever Debbie and I made plans. She'd pop up at the coffee shop, the park, the places Debbie and I would go. And every time, it was the same thing. She would sit down with us, start talking to me, and act like Debbie wasn't even there. It was so obvious, like she was trying to insert herself into everything. The worst part, she started making these really personal comments about me. Things she couldn't have known unless she was paying attention to everything I said to Debbie. She'd casually bring up conversations I had with Debbie, stuff that was meant to stay between us. I started feeling trapped, like she was purposely trying to make me uncomfortable, and Debbie didn't even notice it. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe Darlene was just being overly friendly. But it got worse. It wasn't just a constant need to be around me, it was how she would touch me. Like she'd stand too close, or when she laughed at something I said, she'd lightly touch my arm. At first, I figured it was just her being touchy-feely, but then it became clear that she was trying to get me to notice her in a way that wasn't normal for a sister to act around her sister's boyfriend. I felt like I was losing my mind. I didn't want to make it a big deal because I knew it would upset Debbie, but I also couldn't just ignore it anymore. It wasn't just innocent flirting, it was like Darlene was deliberately trying to sabotage my relationship with Debbie. I didn't want to get involved in drama, but it was becoming impossible to pretend everything was okay. One night, I decided I needed to talk to Debbie about it. I wanted to tell her what was going on, but I didn't know how. How do you explain to your girlfriend that her sister is constantly making you uncomfortable without sounding paranoid or accusing? I was terrified it would make Debbie feel like I was choosing sides, but it was eating me up inside. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. Darlene had crossed a line when she showed up at my apartment one night. I had just gotten off work, and I was sitting on my couch when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find her standing there wearing this low-cut dress, smiling like she was expecting something. She didn't even seem surprised when I opened the door. It felt like she had planned it, like she knew exactly what she was doing. I told her to leave, but she didn't. She stood there, smiling, and I knew in that moment that if I didn't put an end to it, things would get way worse. I called it off with Debbie a few days later. I knew she wasn't the problem, but I couldn't keep dealing with her sister's behavior. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was creepy. I felt guilty for doing it, but I knew it was the only way. I couldn't be in a relationship where I felt like I had to worry about being pursued by my girlfriend's twin sister. The worst part was how Debbie reacted when I told her. She didn't even seem that surprised. Maybe she knew something was off but didn't want to admit it. I don't know. All I know is that the entire situation was a mess, and I walked away from it because of her sister's obsession. I'll never forget that experience. It felt like something out of a bad movie, but it was real. And I was just trying to find a normal relationship. I met Frank on a dating app, which I thought was pretty normal at the time. It wasn't one of those super sketchy ones, either, just your typical looking for someone to talk to kind of place. I'd been chatting with a few people, but nothing too serious. Then Frank messaged me. He seemed nice, funny, easy to talk to, and he wasn't one of those guys who came on too strong or tried to push things too quickly. We talked for days. He told me he was into tech and loved photography, which seemed cool. We had some similar interests, and it felt like we could really click. Honestly, I thought it was just going to be another one of those May online connections that fizzle out. But instead, we started talking every day. We talk about our favorite movies, random stuff like what food we could eat every day and never get tired of, even deep stuff like family and relationships. I was starting to feel pretty comfortable with him. He was funny, a little sarcastic, but in a way that made me laugh. He wasn't weird or pushy, at least not at first. About a week into talking, he asked if we could meet up. It was a little soon, but honestly, I didn't think much of it. He'd been cool online, and I figured it'd be just like me, a new friend. I agreed. He said he'd take me to this little cafe he liked, and we'd grab coffee, talk, and hang out. Nothing crazy. Simple, safe. So we met up. He was just like he'd seemed online, easy to talk to, chill. I wasn't uncomfortable at all. We had a good time. There was no weird tension or anything like I've heard people complain about when meeting someone from the internet. We just talked for a while and decided to walk around the park nearby. After that, things got, well, different. At first, it was subtle. He started texting me more, a lot more, like multiple times a day. I didn't mind. It was kind of nice to have someone care about my day, check in. But then came the odd requests. At first, it was just asking for my location. Like, he'd text me asking, "Where are you?" It was usually harmless, so I didn't think much of it. I'd be at work or hanging with friends, and I'd send him a quick at work or at the store. No big deal. But then he started asking more. Where exactly are you? And when I'd answered, just at the cafe downtown, he'd respond with something like, oh, cool. I'm close by. I'm in the parking lot, actually. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. He probably just happened to be near. I didn't think much of it until it started happening more often. He'd always show up at places I'd go to, even without me mentioning I was there. I'd be at a park, having a walk alone, and he'd send me a message saying, I'm in the park too. Where are you? And I'd look up, and there he was, not far away, just walking toward me, like he'd been there the whole time. It freaked me out a little. I didn't want to overreact, but it was starting to feel too weird. I tried to brush it off, though. I didn't want to be the girl who was paranoid for no reason. Then one day, he sent me a message out of nowhere. Hey, can you send me your location? I remember hesitating for a second, wondering if this was just his way of being funny. Maybe he thought it was cute to check in on me, make sure I was safe. I didn't know, but that voice in my head that told me to be cautious, I ignored it. I sent him my location, thinking, what's the worst that could happen? He replied right away, saying, I'm heading there now. I'll be there in 5. I told myself again not to overthink it. But when I got there, I'd noticed him walking towards me from down the street. And it wasn't the first time he'd done this, but it was the first time it hit me. He knew exactly where I was without me saying anything. It wasn't like he was just nearby or passing through. It was as if he was tracking me. At that point, I started getting uncomfortable. The friendly chats turned into demands. If I didn't respond right away, he'd text again and again and again until I did. He'd send texts like, why didn't you reply? Or, I thought we were close. What's up? It felt like he was testing me, seeing how far he could push things before I'd push back. But it wasn't just the texts. I started noticing that he was showing up places I hadn't told him I'd be. One time, I was with my friends in a bar, and when I looked up, Frank was sitting at a table across the room staring at me. I thought it was a coincidence again. Maybe he was just out with friends too, but something about it felt off. I tried to act like it didn't bother me, but my stomach was twisted in knots. The next day, I texted him to ask if he had been at the bar last night. He replied, yeah, I saw you. You looked like you were having a good time. I'm glad you're hanging out. It sounded harmless enough, but I felt like I was being watched. It was the first time I really felt like I was no longer in control of the situation. I started pulling back a little, being less responsive, trying not to share too much. I didn't want to completely cut him off, but the more I pulled away, the more he came after me. His texts became more insistent, more demanding. He'd ask, what are you doing right now? Where are you going next? He was tracking me without me even telling him where I was, and that freaked me out even more. I didn't know how to stop it, how to tell him to back off without causing a scene. I tried ignoring him, blocking him for a few days, but the moment I unblocked him, he messaged me again like he was waiting. I don't know when I stopped feeling safe. At first, I thought maybe I was just overthinking it all. But the more he showed up, the more I realized I was being watched. He knew where I was at all times, and I didn't know how he was doing it. I wish I could say I did something to make it stop. But I didn't. I kept quiet, hoping it would just fade away. It didn't. Now, when I look back, I wonder if I was too trusting, too naive to see the signs early on. But one thing is for sure, I'll never meet anyone off a dating app again without doing a hell of a lot more research first. I never thought a simple date could turn into something so horrifying. I mean, you hear the stories about online dating gone wrong, but I never thought it would happen to me. Dating apps were supposed to be a way to meet people, to connect, maybe even find someone special. But with Sheila, everything went off the rails in a way I'll never forget. It all started on one of those typical Friday nights when I was bored and decided to scroll through a dating app. I was pretty familiar with the whole thing, matches, quick chats, and the occasional meetup. But Sheila, she was different. Her profile wasn't full of the usual adventurous traveler or love hiking nonsense. She had a genuine feel to her, talking about how she loved to cook, wanted to find someone to connect with on a deeper level, and even mentioned how she loved quirky food experiments. It wasn't like anything else I'd seen. She seemed real. Her pictures were simple. She had this natural beauty, no filters, no fancy makeup. Just a girl in a cozy sweater, drinking coffee in a little cafe. She seemed so down to earth, which is exactly the kind of vibe I was looking for. So I sent her a message, and to my surprise, she responded quickly. We hit it off fast. We talked for hours about everything, our favorite movies, music, and weird little quirks we had. It didn't take long before we decided to meet in person. She suggested a small bakery in the city, and I figured it'd be a chill, low-pressure first date. When I met her in person, she was even better than I had imagined. Her smile lit up the room, and she had this calming presence about her. We sat down, and as we started talking, I realized how easy it was to talk to her. It didn't feel forced or awkward like it had with some other people I'd met before. She was warm, funny, and genuinely interested in everything I had to say. I felt comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Sheila mentioned that she loved to bake and cook, and as we were chatting, she casually brought up that she was experimenting with some new recipes at home. She asked if I liked trying new foods, and I said I was open to anything. I didn't think much of it at the time. In fact, I actually thought it was kind of sweet. She was passionate about food, and that was something I appreciated. It's always nice when someone has hobbies they genuinely enjoy. A few days later, Sheila invited me over to her place. She said she was making a special meal and she wanted me to try it. I thought it was cool, no big deal. I liked that she was being thoughtful, trying to cook something new for us to share. So I agreed to come over, no questions asked. What could possibly go wrong? When I arrived at her apartment, it smelled incredible. She was standing in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, looking like she was in her element. It looked cozy, dim lighting, a soft playlist playing in the background, and a small candle flickering on the table. Everything about the evening seemed perfect. I was excited to spend some more time with her and try whatever she had made. She set the table and brought over a big plate of what looked like a mix of pasta and veggies with a creamy sauce. It looked delicious, honestly. I sat down, and we started chatting about random things while we ate. I remember telling her how great the food was and how she had a real talent for cooking. She smiled and mentioned that she'd been working on perfecting the recipe for a while, trying to get it just right. Now, here's where things got weird. I hadn't even noticed at first, but about halfway through my meal, I started to feel an itch in the back of my throat. I chalked it up to maybe a little spice or something, but the feeling didn't go away. Then it got worse. My throat tightened, and I started to feel like I couldn't swallow properly. At first, I thought maybe it was just some weird allergy or a weird reaction to the food. But then I remembered I had a nut allergy. I had told Sheila about my nut allergy early on. It wasn't something I usually had to mention because it was pretty obvious. Anytime I ate out or tried new food, I always made sure to ask if it had nuts in it. I even carried an EpiPen with me just in case. So when I started feeling my throat tighten, panic set in. I pushed my plate away, hoping it would help, but the reaction was already starting to take hold. My chest felt tight, and I could barely breathe. I tried to stay calm, telling myself I could make it through this. I asked her if she had used any nuts in the meal. She gave me a confused look for a second, then casually said, "Oh, yeah, I added a few crushed walnuts into the sauce. It adds a nice texture, don't you think?" I froze. The room suddenly felt smaller. My mind started racing. She knew about my allergy. How could she not? I had mentioned it so many times. So why the hell would she put nuts in the food? I felt a wave of heat rush to my face, and everything started to blur. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she messing with me? Was this some kind of sick joke? At this point, I was struggling to breathe. My chest was tightening even more, and my heart was pounding in my ears. I stood up, trying to stay calm, but the panic was taking over. I fumbled for my bag where I kept my EpiPen. I was having trouble focusing on anything. It felt like my vision was narrowing, and all I could think was get the EpiPen, hit the EpiPen. Sheila seemed to notice the panic on my face because she started to look concerned, finally, but it didn't seem like genuine concern. It felt more like realization, like she had known exactly what was happening. She didn't rush to help or try to calm me down. Instead, she just stared at me, almost like she was waiting to see what would happen next. I managed to get my EpiPen out and stab it into my leg, praying it would kick in soon. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. My body was shaking, and I could barely keep my balance. Sheila didn't move. She just stood there, watching me with a blank expression. By the time the EpiPen took effect and my breathing started to regulate, I was beyond confused. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I finally asked her why she had done it, why she had knowingly put nuts in the food when she knew about my allergy. She just shrugged, as if it was no big deal. "I thought you'd be fine," she said, like it was a casual comment. That was it for me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just the allergy thing, it was how casual she was about it. It was like she didn't care whether I lived or died. After a few more moments of awkward silence, I grabbed my things and left, not even bothering to say goodbye. I never spoke to Sheila again after that night. It's been months, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I keep thinking about how someone I trusted, someone who seemed so normal and genuine, could do something so cruel. What kind of person does that? It's still hard for me to understand why she would risk my life like that. I guess not everyone on dating apps is looking for love. Some people are just looking for their next victim. I still can't believe I got caught up in that mess. I thought I was doing everything right, swiping through profiles on a dating app, looking for someone real. I was tired of the usual small talk and superficial connections, and all I wanted was something that felt genuine. Then I matched with Zach. Zach was exactly the type of guy I had hoped to meet. His profile had a picture of him in a sleek suit, looking all put together. He had this serious but approachable look, and in his bio he wrote, looking for something meaningful, not into games. That sounded perfect. I'm all about honesty, no drama, no mind games. So naturally, we hit it off immediately. At first, it was easy. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in me. We talked about everything, our families, our favorite places to visit, and what we wanted in life. He told me he worked in business and that he was really focused on building his career. It all sounded so normal, almost too perfect. We didn't talk about exes or relationships too much at first, which I thought was fine. He was straightforward about everything else, and it seemed like we were both on the same page about what we were looking for. After a few weeks of texting, we decided to meet up for the first time. We went to a small Italian restaurant in the city, and when I saw him in person, I was relieved. He looked just like his photos, tall, fit, and still had that same easy smile that made me feel comfortable right away. We spent hours talking, and I remember leaving that night feeling like I had met someone special. I didn't have that feeling very often, but with Zach, it felt right. Over the next couple of weeks, we went on more dates, dinners, walks in the park, simple things, but it felt like we were building something real. There was this undeniable chemistry between us, and it just felt like the more I learned about him, the more I liked. But then things started to get weird. It wasn't anything huge at first, but I began noticing small details that didn't add up. For instance, Zach would sometimes disappear for a few hours without telling me where he was. When I asked, he'd just shrug it off or say he was busy with work. He'd also get a little defensive when I asked about his past relationships. It wasn't anything outrageous, just the way he dodged the topic. It made me a little uncomfortable, but I pushed it aside. I told myself I was probably just overthinking it. Then, one day, out of nowhere, he mentioned Morocco. It was during a casual conversation about travel. We were talking about places we wanted to visit, and he mentioned he had been to Morocco for work. I didn't think much of it. When I asked him more about it, he seemed strangely hesitant. He kind of changed the subject, and I didn't push it. But it was a weird vibe, like he wasn't telling me something important. A couple of weeks later, I decided to do something I didn't normally do. I Googled his name. I wasn't stalking him, but I figured a little research wouldn't hurt, right? I found a few of his social media profiles, and while everything seemed normal at first, I stumbled across a picture on his Facebook page that made my heart stop. It was a photo of him, standing with a woman and two small children. The caption read, "Family in Morocco, missing you already." I stared at that photo for what felt like forever. My mind was racing. What the hell was going on? I had no idea who these people were, and Zach had never mentioned anything about having a family. Not once. He'd always been so open about his work and his past, but this was something he kept hidden. Something big. I felt sick. I couldn't believe it. I needed answers, but I didn't know how to approach it. It was clear I had been lied to. I thought about confronting him right then and there, but I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I didn't want to seem crazy or paranoid, but there was no denying what I had just found. So I decided to wait. I spent the next few days trying to act normal, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in my stomach. Zach kept texting me, and things seemed like they were fine on the surface, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. I had to know the truth, so I decided to ask him about it. When I finally brought it up, I tried to stay calm. I didn't want to accuse him of anything, but I couldn't just ignore what I had seen. I asked him about the photo about his family in Morocco. His face immediately went pale. He stammered at first, then tried to brush it off, claiming it was an old photo from a work trip, and that the woman was just a friend he had met while traveling. But I wasn't buying it. He had already lied to me once, and now he was lying again. I pressed him more. I needed him to explain, and after a long, uncomfortable silence, he finally came clean. Zach admitted that the woman in the photo was his wife, and the children were his kids. He had been married for several years, but he had kept it a secret from me. His job required him to travel a lot, and he said he was stuck in a bad situation with his family, so he'd come to the U.S. to try to get away for a while. He said that he hadn't been happy in his marriage and had hoped to start fresh with someone like me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt like everything had just come crashing down. All those weeks of getting to know each other, were they even real? Had I been just another distraction for him? Another escape from the life he didn't want? I was angry. I felt betrayed. But I also felt sorry for the woman and kids he had left behind in Morocco. I couldn't imagine what they were going through. He had lied to me, but he had lied to them too, and that thought made my stomach turn. I ended things with him that night. I couldn't handle the lies anymore. There was no going back from that kind of betrayal. Looking back, I can't believe how easy it was for him to hide that side of his life from me. He had an entire family on the other side of the world, and I had no idea. It makes me wonder how many other people he's done this to. It makes me question how well you can really know someone online. Dating apps can be full of fake profiles and half-truths, and sometimes even the people who seem the most genuine are hiding the darkest secrets. I should have known it was too good to be true. I mean, my first match with Selena on a dating app, everything seemed perfect. She had this cute, bubbly profile, bright eyes, a huge smile, and a caption that said, "Looking for something real." There was no nonsense, no weird drama. She wasn't trying too hard to be edgy or mysterious. Just a girl looking for something simple. We started talking almost immediately. She was funny, smart, and way more into the conversation than most people I met on there. I remember thinking how refreshing it was to actually have a genuine chat with someone. Most people just send a couple of messages before disappearing or trying to make things awkward. Not Selena. She seemed different. We talked for hours every day. About movies, music, our childhoods, what we wanted out of life, what we liked to do on weekends. She'd talk about her friends, her family, and how she'd just moved back to town after living in another state for a while. Everything felt easy, like we'd been friends for years. She wasn't the type to play games, and I liked that. She seemed so honest, so real. After about 2 weeks, we agreed to meet up. I was kind of nervous because, let's be honest, dating app meets aren't always the best, but I was excited to finally see if we had the same chemistry in person. We decided to grab coffee at a little place downtown, somewhere low-key so it didn't feel like too much pressure. When I saw her for the first time, I swear it felt like a movie scene. She was even more beautiful in person. Her laugh was contagious, and she had this vibe about her that made everything feel so easy. I remember feeling like I was on cloud nine, like things were finally falling into place. I figured we'd hang out, maybe have a few dates, and see where it went. We started seeing each other more often after that. We'd meet up for lunch, catch a movie, or just go for walks and talk about life. Things moved fast, but it felt right. She wasn't the type to rush anything, but there was this undeniable connection between us. We both talk about how much we enjoyed each other's company and how things just seemed to flow naturally. But then, it all changed. One evening after a few weeks of dating, Selena called me, and her voice was different. She sounded kind of distant, like something was off. I asked her what was wrong, and she hesitated for a long time before finally telling me that she had something to tell me. I immediately started to panic, wondering if I had done something wrong. Maybe I said something stupid. Maybe she didn't feel the same way. But what she said next completely blindsided me. She was pregnant, and it wasn't mine. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The words didn't make sense, like I was hearing them through a fog. She told me that the baby was from her ex, someone she had been with on and off for a while before we met. I couldn't believe it. It felt like my whole world flipped upside down in that moment. We'd been seeing each other for weeks, and now, out of nowhere, she was telling me that she was carrying someone else's baby. I had no clue how to process it. I didn't know what to say, so I just stayed quiet, letting her talk. She said she didn't know how to tell me that she hadn't planned for any of this to happen. Apparently, her ex had been pressuring her to get back together for a while, and the timing just happened. She swore it was a mistake, that she was just confused, and she assured me that she didn't want to be with him anymore. but none of that made it better. The whole situation was messed up, and I felt completely blindsided. I couldn't understand how this could have happened, especially after everything we'd been through. It felt like I'd been thrown into a circus that I didn't even sign up for. The thing was, I wasn't mad at her. I mean, sure, I was angry, but more than that, I was hurt. How could she not have told me earlier? How could she hide something so big, something that would change everything between us? I had been thinking we were building something together, only for her to drop this bomb on me. I tried to process it, but everything kept spiraling. She said her ex was trying to get back with her, trying to convince her that they could make it work for the baby's sake. But she didn't want him back, or at least that's what she claimed. She said she was scared, that she didn't know what to do or who to turn to. She said she needed me now more than ever. But how could I be there for her after everything? The trust was broken, and no matter how hard I tried to talk myself into it, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just some guy to fall back on because her ex wasn't around. I didn't want to be a rebound, especially not like this. And I didn't want to feel like I was just some safety net for someone who still had feelings for someone else. We talked for hours that night, with me trying to make sense of it all. I told her I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I could be there for her in the way she needed, knowing all of this now. I felt like I was losing control of my own life, getting swept up in something I didn't choose. A few days later, she called again. She said she had made a decision. She wasn't going back to her ex. She wanted to keep the baby and move on with her life, but she wanted to do it with me. She said I didn't have to be involved if I didn't want to be, but she hoped I would stick by her side. It wasn't like a normal conversation about a new relationship. It felt like she was asking me to choose to help her raise someone else's kid. That felt like way too much to ask of me. It wasn't even about the baby. It was about the lies and the secrets. I didn't know what to do, so I backed away. I told her I needed time to think, but deep down I knew the answer already. I couldn't be a part of this. The trust was gone, and everything felt tainted. I never saw Selena again after that. She tried reaching out a couple of times, but I didn't answer. The whole thing felt like a twisted version of reality, like I had been sucked into some kind of mess I couldn't escape. It wasn't just about the pregnancy or the ex. It was about the feeling of being manipulated, of having my time and emotions played with. Looking back now, I can't believe I let myself get so wrapped up in it. Dating apps can be a mess, and you never really know who you're talking to on the other side of the screen. But sometimes, even when everything seems perfect, you find out that it was never what it seemed. I still remember the day I met Henry like it was yesterday. I was sitting on my bed, scrolling through the dating app I had just downloaded, trying to kill time after a long week of school. I wasn't expecting anything serious, just wanted to chat with someone new. I matched with Henry almost instantly. His profile picture was a typical handsome guy, good looking with a bright smile, dark haired, and a casual photo of him hanging out at a beach. The kind of guy who seemed like he could be cool and chill, someone who wouldn't mind grabbing a coffee with. His bio was simple, looking for someone to vibe with. It was refreshing, honestly. No weird pickup lines, no awkward statements, just straight to the point. We started talking pretty quickly. At first, the conversation was normal, about our favorite movies, music, and what we did for fun. He seemed really easy to talk to, and we had a lot in common. We both liked the same bands, we were into hiking, and we even had some of the same favorite TV shows. Everything felt smooth, like we were old friends catching up. But as the days went on, something started to feel off. It wasn't that he was being weird exactly, but the way he texted sometimes felt too perfect, like he knew exactly what to say all the time. We'd talk about random things, and I'd throw in a joke or something silly, and he'd always reply with the perfect response. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but the more we chatted, the more it started to feel like he was reading my mind. He started getting a little more personal, asking about my family, my friends, and how I felt about relationships. It wasn't unusual, really. Most people want to know a bit more about you, right? But there were times when I'd tell him something, and then the next day, he'd bring it up again, almost like he was trying to get me to open up more. I didn't mind at first. I thought maybe he was just interested in getting to know me better. But then the questions started feeling like an interrogation. "How do you feel about commitment?" he asked once. "Do you think you're ready for something serious?" was another one. I thought it was a little soon to ask, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was just trying to figure out if we were on the same page. I didn't think much of it until one night. After a long conversation, I agreed to meet him. We talked about being at a park near my house, and I thought it'd be nice, something low-key, just to see if the vibe was the same in person. He seemed totally fine with it, and we set a date for the weekend. The day of the meetup, I was nervous but excited. I hadn't really met anyone from the app before, and I wondered what he'd be like in real life. When I got to the park, I checked my phone to see if he'd texted. He hadn't, so I figured I'd just wait for him to show up. I spent the next 10 minutes pacing around, wondering if he was running late. I was just about to text him when I saw a guy walking toward me, looking around as if he was searching for someone. It was Henry, looking exactly like his profile picture. At first, I was relieved. He was cute, and he seemed just as confident in person. But there was something about him that didn't quite match the guy I'd been chatting with. Maybe it was the way he looked at me or how he didn't seem as relaxed as he had in his texts. He smiled, and we made small talk, walking through the park as we talked about our day. But after a while, I noticed something strange. He kept leaning in closer than I was comfortable with. He touched my arm when we laughed, a little too much for my liking, and every time I subtly pulled away, he would do it again. It wasn't aggressive, but it made me uncomfortable, like he was trying to force a connection that wasn't there. The weirdest part, he started asking about my sexuality. I had mentioned in passing during our chats that I was straight, but now he was asking more pointed questions. What I thought about bi people, how I felt about dating guys who weren't straight. I figured maybe he was just trying to gauge how open-minded I was, but the questions didn't stop. It felt like he was prying into parts of my life I didn't even think about much. It wasn't like he was trying to flirt or anything, but his curiosity felt invasive. Then, out of nowhere, he dropped the bombshell. "I'm actually gay," he said, looking at me with an odd grin. "I've been really into you, but I figured it was easier to pretend like I wasn't." My heart dropped. I just stood there for a second, completely frozen. He wasn't saying it like he was ashamed or anything. He said it so casually, like it didn't matter. But it did matter. I was in shock. All this time, I thought he was into me, but now it all made sense. The way he'd asked all those questions about my orientation, the way he kept trying to make physical contact, like he was testing the waters. It wasn't about me at all. It was about him trying to get something from me, even if it wasn't exactly what I thought. I stood there trying to process what had just happened. It felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. Henry wasn't who he seemed to be, and now I was wondering if any of it had been real. The conversations, the laughs, the whole thing, it all felt like a game to him. We ended the date awkwardly. I didn't know what else to say. I mean, what do you say to someone who has been pretending to be someone they're not? We both said goodbye, and I left the park, feeling weirdly empty. I didn't know how to feel about the situation. It wasn't that I had anything against gay people. I didn't, but this wasn't about that. It was about the fact that Henry had led me on, pretending to be someone he wasn't, just to get close to me for reasons I didn't understand. I'd never talked to Henry again after that. I deleted the app and moved on, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept wondering if he had done this with other people too, pretending to be straight just to get close to them. It made me question everything about online dating. How much can you trust someone who is hiding their true self? How much of what people show you is real? I guess I'll never really know. It started like any other night. I was bored, scrolling through my phone, swiping aimlessly on a dating app I'd signed up for on a whim. I wasn't expecting anything serious, just a casual chat here and there, maybe even a fun date if I got lucky. It's what most people do, right? Keep things light. That night, I matched with someone named Freya. Her profile was cute enough, a bit mysterious, with a few artsy photos of her in what seemed like nature spots. No selfies, nothing too over the top. She looked normal, like someone I'd actually want to talk to. Her bio was brief, just something like looking for something real, let's see where it goes, or whatever. A little cliche, but it wasn't bad. I sent the usual hey and waited. Within minutes, she responded, and we started chatting. At first, it was nothing special. We talked about the usual stuff, what we were into, how our days went, that kind of thing. But what caught my attention was how easy the conversation felt. It didn't feel forced or awkward at all, like we'd known each other for ages. As the chat went on, Freya seemed to open up more. She told me about her life, her dreams, and all that. It was casual, nothing that raised any red flags. She said she worked a normal job, had just moved to the city a few months ago, which, didn't sound too out of the ordinary. We were both kind of shy, but the more we talked, the more comfortable I felt with her. Then things started to get weird. Freya started to ask about my personal life. She seemed really interested in knowing things like where I lived, what my family was like, if I had any deep secrets I was hiding. At first, I shrugged it off as just small talk, but she pushed a little too much, asking about things I hadn't even told most of my friends. I got a bit uncomfortable, but for some reason I didn't stop answering. There was something about the way she texted. It felt convincing, almost like she knew exactly what to say to keep me hooked. One night, Freya sent me a photo. It wasn't a regular selfie, though. This one looked professional, like something you'd see in a magazine or on Instagram. The kind of picture where everything just looked too perfect. I stared at it for a second, not sure how to feel. She looked beautiful, but there was something about the photo that felt off, like it wasn't real. I didn't think too much of it, though. After all, people take good photos, right? Maybe she had a photographer friend. I complimented her on it, and she seemed pleased. Then things escalated fast. Out of nowhere, she suggested we meet up. She wanted to hang out and get to know each other better in person. This was the part where I started to hesitate. We'd been talking for weeks, but something about it felt too rushed too soon. She insisted, though, and for some reason I agreed. We set a date to meet at a coffee shop downtown. I was nervous but excited. It was going to be cool, right? Just a casual meetup. But as the day of our meeting drew closer, I started to get an eerie feeling. Maybe it was just my nerves, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every time we texted, her responses started to feel a little off, like she was typing too fast or the text seemed scripted. I couldn't explain it, but I had a bad feeling deep down that I couldn't ignore. Still, I convinced myself it was just me overthinking things. Maybe I was just paranoid from all the true crime documentaries I'd been binge watching. The morning of the meetup arrived and I was ready. I headed to the coffee shop, arriving a little early. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing. I wasn't sure why, but I started scanning the area, looking for someone who might look like Freya. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message from her to tell me she was on her way. Nothing. 10 minutes passed, then 20, 30. Still nothing. I sat there, sipping my coffee, trying to play it cool. Maybe she was just running late. But as the hours ticked by, I couldn't shake the growing sense of anxiety creeping in. What was going on? Why wasn't she showing up? Finally, after what felt like forever, I decided to text her. Hey, you still coming? I sent the message and waited. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling more and more like a fool. Was I being played? Maybe she changed her mind, maybe she ghosted me. But then I received a message from her. I could feel my heart racing as I opened it, praying that maybe she'd just been busy. But the message wasn't from her. Not really. It was a photo of Freya, the one she had sent me before, but with a caption, "You didn't really think it was me, did you?" At first, I was confused. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what was happening. The photo looked real enough, but the message made no sense. I stared at it longer, realizing that something wasn't adding up. Why would she send that? Was this some kind of joke? That's what hit me. The entire time we'd been talking, I never really knew anything about her, not really. I didn't know where she worked, where she lived, or anything that would make her seem like a real person. Then it clicked. That profile picture, it wasn't hers. The more I looked at it, the more I realized it looked like an AI-generated image. It was too perfect, too staged. My stomach dropped as I started to piece things together. I wasn't talking to Freya at all. I was talking to someone or something pretending to be her. But who and why? I got up and left the coffee shop, feeling like an idiot. But as I walked outside, I looked down at my phone again. I couldn't help it. I opened the message once more. And that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. The profile picture wasn't just AI generated. It was a picture of a girl who didn't exist at all, or at least not the way I thought. And then, under the photo, a new message popped up. By the way, I'm 12. You should be more careful next time. The air around me seemed to freeze as I stood there, holding my phone, my mind racing. Everything hit me at once. All the questions, the confusion, the dread. I wasn't talking to a girl named Freya. I was talking to a kid, using AI-generated photos, pretending to be someone else. And somehow I had missed every single red flag. I dropped my phone in shock. My heart was still racing, but now it was fear, not excitement. That was the last time I ever used a dating app. I've been going back and forth about whether or not I should even tell anyone this. It feels weird to talk about, but I've been stuck in my head for weeks now, and I can't shake this sense of dread. I know it's gonna sound insane, but I promise it's all true. Everything I'm about to tell you happened to me, and I'll never look at dating the same way again. I've been using this dating app for a while, just casual stuff, a few dates here and there, just trying to meet people. I was never really into the whole love at first sight thing, but I was open to seeing where it could go. That's when I matched with her. Her name was Emma. She had this easygoing vibe. Her pictures were cool, nothing too staged. She liked to hike, she was into indie movies, and she seemed like someone who just wanted to chill and enjoy life. We hit it off right away, and the conversations flowed effortlessly. It didn't take long for us to start talking every day. We text about everything, our days, our favorite books, our favorite hangout spots around town. She wasn't overly forward or anything, just easy to talk to. I liked her instantly. I was genuinely excited to meet her in person. I even started thinking maybe this could turn into something more. After a couple of weeks of talking, we decided it was time to meet up. I invited her over to my apartment. I figured I'd cook something simple. We'd hang out, maybe watch a movie, and just see how things went. I didn't think anything was weird about it at the time. I was pumped, maybe even a little nervous, but overall, I was just looking forward to getting to know her more. I gave her the details about my place, just a simple apartment building, not too far from the city center. We had plans for the evening. When the day finally came, I was pretty stoked. I cleaned up, made sure everything looked decent, and just tried to get ready for a fun night. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it, expecting her to be standing there with that friendly smile I'd seen in her photos. Instead, my stomach dropped when I saw her face. "Emma," I said, a little confused. She looked back at me, equally confused. "Yeah, is this your place?" I nodded, still trying to process what was happening. "Yeah, this is it. Across the hall from you." Her expression shifted in an instant. It was subtle, but I saw it. That flicker of recognition. Then she did this awkward laugh like she was trying to shake off something uncomfortable. "Wait a minute. This is your place?" she asked, pointing behind me into the apartment. I nodded again, completely lost. "Yeah, why?" Her face was completely pale now. "I live across the hall from you." That's when it hit me. She didn't mean across the street or across the block. She was literally talking about the apartment building we were both in. I was in a state of shock for a second, trying to wrap my head around it. My mind was racing. There's no way she could be serious. She had been living in the same building as me this whole time, and I hadn't even known. I thought about our conversations. She had mentioned vague stuff about where she worked, about the places she liked to go, but nothing that stood out as, "Hey, I'm right next door." I asked her if she'd been to my building before, maybe recognized my face, but she just looked at me like I was an idiot. "I've seen you in the hallway," she said, almost like she was whispering, "but I never thought it was you." Now I was starting to get a little uneasy. I didn't know what to think. What were the odds that we both end up on the same dating app and match without ever realizing we were living so close? I started getting this gnawing feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. My mind started piecing things together, but it wasn't until she started talking that everything clicked. "I don't know why this feels so weird," she said, almost talking to herself, "but it does." She sounded distant, like she was trying to process everything too. "Yeah, I don't get it either. But hey, why don't we just go inside and talk about it?" I said, trying to steer the situation back to normal. I stepped aside to let her in, but the moment she crossed the threshold, everything about the night shifted. I had this sudden realization that made my blood run cold. She knew way too much about me. Not just the stuff we talked about in the app, but the things I hadn't shared with her. She knew about the gym I went to. She knew about the coffee shop I always grabbed my morning cup from. Hell, she even knew the route I took when I walked to work. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. I thought maybe she had mentioned something about her day, and had shared details that lined up. But then the more she talked, the more I realized that she'd been paying attention to every little thing I did. I tried to ignore it, tried to laugh it off. But when she started talking about how she liked to watch me walk out of the building in the mornings, it hit me hard. She was watching me. For months. She had been sitting there across the hall, observing me like I was some kind of experiment. When I realized what was happening, I panicked. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore. She had been studying my routine, learning everything about me so she could reel me in. She was literally living across from me this whole time, using everything I'd told her in our chats to make me feel comfortable, to lure me into meeting her. That's when I tried to leave. I told her I needed some space, that I wasn't comfortable with this whole situation, but she wasn't having it. She started getting more intense, more persistent. She insisted that this was fate, that it was meant to happen, that we were supposed to be together. She wouldn't let me leave. Every time I tried to stand up, she blocked the door, telling me we couldn't just throw this away. I was starting to feel trapped, like there was no way out. I don't remember how long I was in there with her, but I finally managed to get her to back off long enough for me to slip out. I left, locking the door behind me, and I didn't look back. Since then, I haven't heard from her. But every time I walk out of my apartment now, I feel that weight in the back of my mind. I know she's still out there across the hall, probably watching me as I go about my day. I don't know if she's still keeping tabs on me or if she's just waiting for the next sign that we're supposed to cross paths again. But I'm always looking over my shoulder now. I can't get the image of her standing there in my apartment, saying that it was meant to be out of my head. This is gonna sound wild, but I swear it's all true. I'm still kind of messed up from it, and it's been a couple of months. But here it goes. I was using this dating app, right? Nothing too fancy, just the usual. You know the drill. Swipe, chat, maybe get a drink or dinner, whatever. I matched with this girl. Her name was Megan. She had a cute smile, a killer profile pic, and her bio was full of stuff I liked, so naturally I swiped right. We started talking right away. And man, it was easy. It felt like we'd known each other for ages. We talked about everything. Music, movies, what we were looking for, dumb stuff like our favorite pizza toppings. She was funny and kind of sarcastic in a way that made me feel like I could just be myself, which was rare. After a few days of texting, we decided to meet up. She picked this coffee shop in the middle of town. It was one of those places with the exposed brick walls, indie music playing in the background. Basically, a hipster's dream. She was there when I showed up, already sitting at a table, sipping her drink. She waved at me, and I swear, it felt like we'd known each other forever. We started chatting, and it was just easy. I liked her instantly. There was no weirdness, no awkward silences. It just flowed. We stayed there for hours talking about everything under the sun. Honestly, I started thinking that maybe this could be the start of something real. And that's when it started to get weird. We had another date a few days later, and we were hanging out at her apartment. It was cozy, not too fancy, but comfortable. I didn't really think much of it. We were watching a movie, and she kept getting up to go to the kitchen. I didn't think anything of it, just figured she was making snacks or whatever. Then, after the movie ended, she asked if I wanted to stick around for a bit. Of course, I said yes. At one point, she went to her bedroom to change, and when she came back out, she was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants. Her hair was up in a messy bun, and she looked so much more relaxed. We sat on the couch, and she started talking about her childhood. How she grew up in a small town, had a few close friends, and how her family was supportive of her decisions. And that's when it happened. She said something that made me pause. She mentioned how hard it was to adjust to being herself after all the years of pretending to be someone she wasn't. I figured she was talking about how we all kind of change as we get older, right? Like, we evolve, we get more comfortable in our skin. But then she looked at me real serious and said, "You know, I used to be a guy." I froze. I didn't know what to say. I think she saw my face change because she immediately started explaining it all. She told me about her transition, how she'd been a man for most of her life, and then decided to transition when she hit her late 20s. She went on about how it wasn't an easy journey and how she had to fight to be who she was. I felt a little stunned, I guess. Not in a bad way, but more in a this is a lot to process kind of way. I'm not against people transitioning. Honestly, it didn't bother me. What bothered me was that I had no idea. She had never mentioned anything about it before. Her profile didn't say anything about it and the way she talked about herself. It was like she was totally a woman from the start. She didn't really give me time to think about it either. She just kept talking like she was trying to ease the tension or something. But then my mind started racing. Why wouldn't she have told me sooner? Why didn't she mention anything on her profile? I mean, she knew I wasn't some judgmental jerk. I wasn't freaked out, but I felt like I had been blindsided. I started wondering if maybe there was something more to the whole situation, something I wasn't seeing. The night went on, and we finished watching another movie, but I wasn't really paying attention anymore. I just kept thinking about everything she'd said. When I left, I felt weird. Not in a bad way, but in a what the hell just happened kind of way. I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did something I normally wouldn't do. I went home and Googled her. I didn't want to, but I had to. I just needed to know more about her past, about her life before all of this. I found a few things: photos of her before she transitioned, links to some of her posts on support groups, a blog entry about her experiences transitioning. It wasn't that I was mad or uncomfortable. It was more like I just needed to understand her better. I started looking deeper. More posts, more pictures, random articles she'd written. That's when I found something that made my stomach drop. There was a video from a year ago posted on some weird forum. The title is about secretly filmed dates with men who didn't know they were dating a woman. At first, I thought it was a joke or some random prank. But when I clicked on it, I saw her face. It was definitely her. The video was blurry, shot from a distance, and the audio wasn't great, but I could hear her talking. She was on a date with a guy, and he looked totally unaware that she had transitioned. He didn't react the way I would have expected, like he wasn't freaked out, but she was clearly keeping her past hidden from him. I felt sick, like really sick. This wasn't just a "hey, I used to be a guy" conversation. This was something else. I thought about all the little things that didn't add up now. Why didn't she mention it? Why did she need to hide that part of her life? And why had she gone through all that effort to keep it a secret from me? I decided I needed answers. I texted her the next morning saying I needed to talk. She didn't respond right away, and when she finally did, it was just this casual, "let's hang out again soon, okay." I could feel her avoiding the conversation. So I sent her a message saying I knew about the video and I wasn't sure what was going on, but I didn't feel comfortable anymore. That was the last time I heard from her. I deleted her number and blocked her everywhere. I don't know if she was just messing with me or if something deeper was going on, but I don't think I'll ever be able to fully trust someone I meet online again. Sometimes I still wonder if I was just another part of some twisted experiment, or if she was really trying to be honest with me and I just couldn't see it. Either way, I'm glad I didn't stick around to find out. I should have known something was off when he sent me that first message. It was a normal enough greeting, a little cheesy but not over the top. But there was this intensity behind it, like he was trying to lock me into something before I even realized it. I was skeptical but curious. I mean, we all get a little excited when someone seems genuinely into us, right? So I gave him a shot. We met up for coffee, which I thought was casual and easy. No weird expectations, just a simple chance to get to know each other. And it was perfect. He was charming, well-spoken, and not at all the type to make me uncomfortable. There was a natural flow to the conversation, and I found myself smiling the whole time. We talked about everything, from our favorite books to weird childhood memories, and there was this connection that felt real. The kind of connection you don't expect to feel after just one meeting. He texted me almost right after we said goodbye, saying how much he enjoyed our time. I figured it was just the usual "thanks, had a good time" message, but his tone was different, almost too eager. But again, I brushed it off. The next date was even better. We went for a walk around the city, hit up a small pub for drinks. We stayed there for hours, just talking and laughing. I was starting to get a little invested at this point, thinking maybe I had actually met someone decent. He texted me throughout the day, little messages, random thoughts. But after that second date, something started to feel off. The texts kept coming. At first, it was flattering. "I can't stop thinking about you. I feel like we have this incredible connection," stuff like that. But after a while, the messages became obsessive. He'd message me first thing in the morning, asking how I slept. Then throughout the day, asking what I was doing, what I was thinking. It wasn't like a casual check-in. It felt like he was just monitoring my every move. When I didn't reply right away, I'd get a second message, sometimes a third, as if he was waiting for me to respond. It was weird. I tried to ignore it, but the more I did, the more it seemed like he was digging deeper. One evening, I was out with friends, and he sent me a text asking if I was thinking about him. I didn't reply, just to see if he would get the hint. A minute later, he texted again. "I know you're probably busy, but I just wanted to remind you how much I love what we have." That was the moment I felt it, that weird sense of unease that had been creeping up on me. I ignored it and didn't text back for the rest of the night. But it didn't stop there. A couple of days later, he invited me over to his place. I was hesitant at first. His place was a bit far, but I figured, what's the worst that could happen? When I arrived, I was greeted by a warm smile and a hug, and everything seemed fine at first. We had some drinks, watched a movie, talked a little more. But as we were hanging out, I went to use the bathroom, and that's when I noticed it. There was this tiny red light. It blinked almost like a dot, tucked away above the door frame, just barely visible in the dim lighting of the hallway. It wasn't big, but it was there, and it didn't belong. It was out of place, like something that was supposed to be hidden. It made my stomach drop. I told myself it was probably some sort of motion sensor or a nightlight, but my gut told me it wasn't. I got this cold feeling like there was something I wasn't seeing, something he was hiding. After a few more minutes of pretending nothing was wrong, I came out of the bathroom and tried to act normal. But I couldn't shake that nagging feeling. I had to ask about it. "Hey," I started, "what's that light above the bathroom door? It's a little odd." His reaction was immediate. He brushed it off quickly, a forced laugh. "Oh, it's nothing. Just a little thing I have for security. I'm super paranoid, you know." His voice had a kind of edge to it, like he was trying to dismiss the question without making it a big deal. I wasn't convinced. The more I thought about it, the more it bugged me. I went back to the bathroom after a while, hoping I was just overthinking things. But the light was still there. I looked around the room, and that's when I realized it wasn't just the bathroom. There were other little things, like how he always seemed to know what I was up to, even when we weren't talking. He'd comment on things I had posted on social media minutes after I posted them. The texts kept coming too. At first, it was just sweet, but now it felt like he was tracking my every move. If I didn't text him back right away, he'd send another message, almost panicked, saying things like, "I hope you're okay," or "I'm just checking in." The problem wasn't the frequency of the messages. It was the way he seemed to expect responses instantly, like I owed him something. It didn't take long for me to start questioning if he had cameras hidden in his apartment. The more I thought about it, the more obvious it became. The blinking red light wasn't just some paranoid security thing. It was a camera. I couldn't let it go anymore. So the next time I went to his place, I confronted him directly. I tried to act calm, but my hands were shaking. "What's with all the cameras?" I asked. He froze and looked at me like I had caught him doing something innocent, though I knew deep down it wasn't. "I have cameras in a few places," he admitted. "For my own security, in case something happens." He said it with this calmness that made me want to puke. It wasn't normal. Nothing about it was normal. I left his apartment that night with my heart racing. My gut was screaming at me that I had just barely dodged something worse. Something more twisted. I don't know what his real intentions were, but I wasn't going to stick around to find out. That was the last time I spoke to him. I deleted his number, blocked him on social media. But every now and then I still feel that sense of dread when I see a low red light blinking in the corner of a room. It's a reminder that sometimes things are too good to be true, and some people, they're just not who they say they are.